Hello there, and welcome to another tier list maker thing. We're going to look at monstrous mounts. So, essentially, inclusion criteria here. I'm looking at stuff that essentially makes a character a large target. I've put the greater demons in there as well because, well, they're not monstrous mounts per se, but they are pretty nasty, like large target style things. Right, so let's start off with where I am on the books, and let's have a look at Orcs and Goblins. Actually, no, let's do it in the list. So we've got a Ragnarok Spider, which is an interesting mount. It's basically for a goblin. It's 310 points. No, that's the Ragnarok Spider, isn't it? I don't know. How much is it for just the character? Hold on a sec. Ragnarok Spider. See page 36. This is great content, isn't it? Watching me scroll through a document. Yeah, so it is 310 points. It can take a Spider Silk Lobber. It basically adds 7 wounds to your goblin character, so you can get up to like 10 wounds, which is pretty good. It's only got an armor save of 4 up. You can't really improve on that. What it does do is if you've got a goblin style list, it can essentially if you've got a wizard on there who is your general, then it can extend the range of like the WoW magic spells to 18 inches. So the extra charge one and the reroll ones to hit and other benefits spell become like an 18-inch bubble. So it's really, really good for that purpose. Other than that, it's toughness 6, 10 wounds is pretty good. It's got D6 stomp attacks. It's got poisoned attacks as well. So, with its 6 attacks at strength 5, AP 2, which is pretty. Oh no, it's not AP2. Sorry, just count as hand weapon. It has a single strike first, multiple wounds, D6, AP2, poison attack, blah 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 blah, which is venom surge. So it's pretty good. It's pretty strong. The thing is, the goblin that you put on it can't really be equipped to do much with it. So I'd put that again as like a solid B tier. I'll probably review that later. I'm not happy with that. It might be. It's very difficult to place the Ragnarok Spider, to be honest, because it's quite difficult to work out what it does. It can take a Spider Silk Lobber as well, which essentially has a sort of which is a mortar more or less. Shoots like a stone thrower, 5-inch template, strength 4 in the middle, AP 1 in the middle, strength 2 elsewise. But because the model has poisoned attacks, the Spider Silk Lobber itself is basically a poisoned attack mortar, so which can be pretty good. But you are looking at 500 or 600 points then for something that is like a poisoned mortar and does a bit, and it's quite difficult to work out how to assess that. The other Orc and Goblin character is the Wyvern. You do see this a lot. I'm going to make it. The Wyvern itself isn't that good. What is good is the Black Hawk that sits on top of it. Excuse me. So, the Black Hawk that sits on top of it, the Wyvern makes him toughness 6 and gives him an extra 4 wounds, which is pretty good. Considering that you can give him that the Black Hawk comes with full plate already. You can essentially, with Troll High Trousers and a shield, get him up to a 2-up save. I'm going to make it A tier actually. It's pretty good for that. It's got Fly 9. It's got D3 stomps, no impact hits. So it's not great, but it is still a very good option for Orcs and Goblins. It's actually a pretty good option for a wizard as well, because your Orc Weird Knobs, Orc Shaman, sorry. Oh no, it is Weird Knob. Yeah, your Orc Weird Knob is already toughness 5, so it's still toughness 6 even with the level 4 wizard on, which I think is pretty strong. So yeah, again, it's another one that's difficult to place because it's a dragon, but it's not as good as other dragons, but it does make the character on top significantly better. So that's worthwhile. That's worthwhile doing. Warriors of Chaos next. So Warriors of Chaos have two. They have the Manticore and we've got the Chaos Dragon. The Manticore, I think, is slightly worse than the Wyvern. The Chaos Dragon is S tier. It's one of the best dragons in the roster. It has essentially all the attacks that you want. So let's have a look at the Manticore first. So the Manticore looks like this. It doesn't give you any extra toughness. Actually, I'm going to put it down a tier because of that. It's pretty good, but if you've got like a level 4 wizard, a level 4 wizard is only toughness 4, so it's still toughness 4. The Chaos Dragon makes your level 4 wizard toughness 5. You really need a Chaos Lord on there because Chaos Lord starts as toughness 5, so it then becomes toughness 6. The Manticore itself, can occasionally be accidentally frenzied. Manticore's a pretty good option for a Chaos Lord if you're wanting to save some points, because the Manticore costs 120 points, Chaos Dragon costs 285, so it's a 165 point saving. But the Chaos Dragon, strength 7, AP 2, and it has 2 flaming attacks. You can't use both, but you can pick one. One of them is strength 2, no armor saves, and one is strength 4, AP 1, flaming. So they're both sort of slightly different, but they've both got some pretty. It's got some pretty good utility because it can pick one or other. And the Chaos Dragon has D6 stomps, where I think the Manticore has D3 stomp attack. So Manticore, I might put it down. No, the Manticore's not that good actually. I'll put it down to C. Okay. Then we have Beastmen. Don't really have any monstrous mounts that make their characters large targets, so they don't really have any entries here, unfortunately. Tomb Kings of Khemri are an interesting one in that you've got this Necrolith Bone Dragon, which you do see being taken a lot. It's definitely A tier. It's got the D6 stomps. It's only strength 6, but it does add an extra 5 wounds, which is pretty good, especially considering your tomb king has 4 wounds already, so you're up to 9 wounds, which is pretty good. It does give a full plate save, which Tomb Kings are pretty low on armor anyway, so that's pretty useful, especially for a wizard. But sadly, it does have dry as dust, so it is hurt a bit by flammable attacks, which isn't fantastic. However, it does have this really cool ability called Cloud of Dust, which means shooting at it, you're -1 to hit, because it kind of kicks up this cloud of dust when it's sort of around. Its breath weapon is strength 3, AP 2, multiple wounds 2, which is pretty good. It's good against Bretonnians because a lot of Bretonnians are toughness 3. It's good against high elves, but against higher toughness armies, it's not so good. So it's an interesting breath weapon that's okay, and the multiple wound 2 is quite interesting. As well, in Khemri, you have the War Sphinx, which I'm going to put down as C tier. Now, the War Sphinx is pretty. I'll show you it here. The War Sphinx is pretty good. It's quite cheap. I used to like it better than the dragon because I thought it saved a lot of points, but it doesn't really because the dragon's 195 and this is 1. So the dragon's only an extra 20 points. However, this, it doesn't fly. It's quite slow. It hasn't got swift stride. It's got some stomp attacks, but not that many. And it's got some other attacks, but they're not that good. So it's a semi-decent monster, but it's just not fantastic, really. So that's all the bad guys from the normal book. So let's do the good guys. In fact, let's save the good guys to the end. For reasons that will become apparent. Right. Chaos Dwarves. So you've got the Great Tauruses first off. In fact, let's deal with the Lamassu first. The Lamassu is Rubbish. Where's the Lamassu? That's the funny one with the beard. It doesn't add any extra to toughness, so your characters are probably toughness 5. It only adds an extra 3 wounds. It's still a large target, so it doesn't benefit from cover. It's got this thing called Sorcerous Miasma, which means any enemy models using a magic weapon to attack a character on a Lamassu counts as being armed with a simple hand weapon instead. So you can't use your magic weapons against it, which adds a bit to survivability, but not that much really. It's okay. It's got 2 attacks at strength 5, so it's not. It doesn't really do that much damage. It's only got D3 stomp. You know, it's just not very good. It does have furious charge, which means it gets an extra attack on the charge, but you can upgrade it to have another attack, which is the mace tail, and it does have a strength 4 AP2 breath weapon, which is okay. I'm talking it up, actually. I'm going to swap these 2 around. I think it's probably about as good as the Manticore, to be honest. It's a little bit cheaper than the Manticore as well. I don't know. Maybe it's B tier. I don't know. We'll see. And then, of course, you've got the Great Tauruses. So there's a Bale Taurus and a Great Taurus. They've both got more or less. You'd always go for the Bale Taurus because it gives you an extra toughness. Like, those extra 40 points are definitely worth it. It's slightly stronger. It's got another attack. They've both got more or less the same, except the Bale Taurus has got an extra stomp. D3 plus 1 is pretty decent. It's fairly reliable. And again, it does have furious charge. And causes terror. And It's got a 3 at ward against flaming attacks, which, can be pretty useful because there's quite a lot of flaming attacks in there. So I quite like it. So I think the Bale Taurus is probably A tier, and the Great Taurus is probably C tier, or maybe B tier, because it's not, again, 120, even 160 points. It's so cheap for what it adds. It's pretty good. That's 195, remember, and that's 1 something or other. So these are all relatively cheap mounts that are pretty decent, but not amazing. Then you've got ogres. I'll start off with the Stonehorn. I'm actually going to put it as D. And I've taken one of these to tournaments as a mount, and I'll tell you why it's a D. A, it gets challenged out really easy. So you charge into a unit, for instance. They challenge you. You've got D6 plus 1 impact hits that hit the champion and kill it, and then the rest of the attacks are wasted. It doesn't have stomps, so in subsequent round of combat, you don't really get anything. You don't get impact hits or whatever. It's just pretty rubbish in general. It's got, if you hit it with multiple wound damage, you reduce the damage suffered by 1. So if it's like multiple wounds D3 and they roll a 3, then it's actually only 2. So it's slightly more survivable. It gives it a bit more it gives your character a bit more survivability, and it does have full plate armor. So if you wanted to go with Frostlord on top but then again, you're limiting your armor save, and it's only got movement 7 and swift stride, which is pretty good, but not as good as a lot of other stuff on here. It's got the thunderous charge ability that basically means that the impact hits AP2. So impact hits, D6 plus 1 impact hits, strength 6, AP2, but generally speaking, your opponent doesn't really let you have that. Actually, it's not that bad. It's probably worse than the Lamassu overall. Then we've got the Thunder Tusk. Now, the Thunder Tusk I really like as a mount for a BSB with an ogres. It's not good for your main character because, again, you get challenged out, so it's less effective. It has D3 impact hits and 3 stomp attacks. 3 stomps is really good. It also has this ability called Numbing Chill. Now, Numbing Chill means that whilst in base contact with this model, enemy models suffer -1 to weapon skill and initiative, which is, being able to just downscale your opponent's initiative. It's got a decent number of attacks with a decent number of... So it's pretty solid mid-tier... mount. It does have swift stride, but it only has movement 6, so it's okay. It's got severe limitations, but it's still pretty good. Moving on to the Lizardmen. Now there's quite a few varieties. So a skink chief can go on a stegodon, and a skink priest may go on an ancient stegodon. So there are different values of stegodon. The ancient stegodon basically has fewer attacks but higher strength and weapon skill, whereas the stegodon has one more attack but only strength 5 instead of strength 6. It does add 5 wounds to your skinky character, which is pretty good. However, it's only a skink that's on there. It's got D3 plus 1 impact hits, D3 plus 2 stomp attacks. So stegodons do quite a lot of work. And it's also got some pretty decent combat attacks. It's got great horns. So, you know, they're strength user, but they're AP 3, which is pretty awesome. And more than anything, it's you can put an engine of the gods on it, which is okay. It's a bound spell that's cast on an 8 with a power level of 3, doing 2d6 strength 4 hits, no AP with flaming attacks. So, you know, again, that's pretty useful. But yeah, I mean, I'm not massively sold on it. I'm not sure it's that good. Toughness 6, but it's only got 5 wounds. And I say only. I suppose if you've got a character on it, it makes it better because it's got more wounds. Yeah, is it B or is it A? It's better than a Thunder Tusk. It's probably better than an Ragnarok, but it's at the top of B, in my opinion. Then you've got the Carnosaur, which is 170 points, right? So the Carnosaur is a monster slayer, right? It does kill other monsters, right? It's got Blood Frenzy, so as soon as it does a wound, the not its rider, but the Carnosaur, does a wound, it becomes frenzied. And it can get frenzy at any stage, so it can lose a round of combat, lose frenzy, and then do a wound and get frenzy back again. Which is, you know, awesome. It's got 4 attacks, which may not seem like a lot. However, those 4 attacks are at strength 7, which is pretty high. And get this, they are AP 3 and multiple wounds D3. But the multiple wounds only applies against monsters. So it is an absolute monster slaying beast of a thing. It's really, really, really nasty. And it does have 2 stomp attacks as well, which if it's in units, it's less effective. But it is an absolutely, you know, you chuck that in a dragon and it's going to do some damage. So I think it's probably bottom end of A tier for me. It's got movement 7 and swift stride, so it struggles to get there. It might not get a charge off, but it's for 170 points. That's very good. It just doesn't fly, but I mean, it's got an old blood on top of anyway, so you know, and that's the old blood's going to do some decent damage too. So I think it sits there. It's probably not as good as these other things because it can't fly and it's not as maneuverable, but it's still very, very good. In fact, actually, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put it down below the Stegodon because it is situational. Stegodon is a bit more universal, whereas this is situational. But in the right situation, it's S tier. It's in the wrong situation, it's probably D tier. Right, Dark Elves. Dark Elves have lots and lots and lots of monsters. They have lots of monsters. They have now. For everybody else, I've included stuff like I've not put the Blood Rack Shrine in, right? And the main reason for that is it's just too slow. I probably should have done, and I'd have made it D tier. Because it makes your witch elf like toughness 5, and it gives her an armor save and all the rest. But like, not the Bloodwrack Shrine, the other one. Where's the other one? Cauldron of Blood. And it's quite cheap, but it's got to be dragged along. And the dragged along rule is, the way that it's implemented is horrendous. So we'll ignore that. Let's go on to the Black Dragon. S tier, easy peasy. The reason for that is it's actually the one dragon that you don't want to be in combat. It's only 280 points, which is quite cheap. And it's the sort of thing really that you want to put a level 4 wizard on. Why? Because you want it out of combat breathing at stuff. Because it's got a strength 4 breath weapon, right? No armor saves against this strength 4 breath weapon, which is fantastic. And actually, every model in a unit that suffers one or more wound from this weapon are at -1 weapon skill. So you fly up to something, you breathe on it, you do probably quite a few wounds, and then that unit's at -1 weapon skill. And that unit probably then has to charge your Dark Elf lady on a dragon. And she's got okay assailment spells. So it's just so good. But that saying that, it is still strength 7, 6 attacks, D6 stomps. You know, it's pretty much a star dragon, but with a much better breath weapon. So it's possibly, in fact, I'm going to put it above the Chaos Dragon. It's possibly the best dragon in the game. And it does have that really important +3 toughness modifier. So all your characters become toughness 6. The Dark Elf Manticore is awful. It only gives you +1 toughness, so you go up to toughness 4. It gives you a load of extra wounds. Other than that, it's exactly the same as a Chaos one. The difference is that you've got Dark Elf characters riding it rather than Chaos characters, and Chaos characters are a lot better. So it's possibly the worst. It's pretty manoeuvrable, and very cheap, but you know, just doesn't really do much. Cool. We'll do demons last, actually. I'll see where they fit in. I'll do the Skaven one now. That one's easy. Both awful. Because of the dragged along thing. Just the Screaming Bell or the Plague Furnace. Because dragged along means they're really difficult to use. And actually, they just make your characters large targets so you can be sniped at and shot with cannons and stuff. So you wouldn't want that, you know. Even though it does have, the Screaming Bell does have a few extra benefits for a Grey Seer. You know, they do make the Grey Seer toughness 6 and they do give a load of wounds. But other than that, you know, it just means he can be sniped by cannons. Whereas actually you're better off hiding behind stuff, in my opinion. Cool. Vampire counts. Vampire counts have quite a few different options, which, again, some of them are quite difficult to assess. The Abyssal Terror is 120 points, gives you +1 toughness, so which is pretty good because you're toughness 5 anyway. Your vampire count is, so you go up to toughness 6. I think the vampire count's toughness 5. You know, it's just pretty good, and you know, it's got some attacks. It gives a bit of extra manoeuvrability. It's only 120 points. So, actually, where have I put it? For the points, I'd probably make it B tier or maybe even A tier. I did get a picture of one. Obviously, it didn't load. But yeah, I'd put it probably around about here if the picture had bothered to load. Have I just missed it? No. Then you've got the Terrorgeist, which is 205 points. You can only put a... you can't put a normal vampire count on. You've got to put a Strigoi Ghoul King on it, which, you know, it's only got light armor. So, yes, it's toughness 6 and it's got 6 wounds, but it's only got light armor. It's got regen 5, which is okay. It's got D6 stomps, which is pretty good. It does have that horrendous Wailing Dirge attack, which makes it... If it didn't have the Wailing Dirge, it would be definitely D tier. But the Wailing Dirge puts it, as a mount, probably... It's better than a Carnosaur, not as good as a Stegodon, I think. Yeah, and it can't, as it's undead, it can't march. So, actually no, because it's got fly. It can. I think you can march if you've got fly, can't you? Hold. They and their mounts can march as. Oh, do you know what? I said something on my last video about vampires can march as normal. So it can. Unless they've joined a unit that does not have... No, I mean, so it can march, because I think Matey Boy's got Dark Vitality, hasn't he? Where is he? The Kenwraith Whites... where's the bloody Strigoi Ghoul King? Has Dark Vitality, so it can march. Yeah, sorry, I'm wrong. So, yeah, I mean, actually, I'll put that at the bottom there, because it can march. I think it's better than a Stegodon because it's a bit more manoeuvrable. Right, and then the final thing in the vampire count... No, that's not the final thing at all, is it? There's quite a lot in the vampire count thing. I'll show you the rules as I'm looking at them. So then we've got the Mortis engine. We'll have a look at that. Mortis engine has the Wailing Dirge. It's a really good mount for a low-level character. You don't want to put your general high-level character on it, ideally, because it makes it a large target, so you can be targeted by cannons and stuff again. It's only got a regen 6, but your character probably makes that a regen 5. Good impact hits. Good amount of strength. It's basically a heavy chariot. But, you know, pretty good. So that I'm going to put as just under the... In fact, just ahead of the Terrorgeist. I think it's just slightly better, because it does have the Wailing Dirge, but it's a lot more survivable in terms of it having a better armor save. So it has a slightly lower toughness, but a much better armor save and much better regen in general. So it's pretty good. And also, you know, it's got the Blasphemous Tone, so it's +1 to casting. So it adds better utility than just the Terrorgeist, which just does damage. And then we've got the Coven Throne, which I really like, but you don't really see being taken very often. Again, it's an upgrade to a Vampire now. So if you've got your Vampire Battle Standard Bearer, put it on the Coven Throne. You've got an 18-inch BSB Aura, which is, you know, pretty good. It's got a good amount of impact hits. It's got this ghoulish glamour thing, so enemy models must take a leadership test before rolling to hit against it, and if they fail, only rolls of a natural 6 will hit, which can be synergized quite heavily with your necromancy stuff. So you can charge it into, so for instance, you could get like the enemy general at like -4 or 5 leadership, and then he can only hit on 6s, which is pretty nasty. So it's you know, it's pretty good. It's got a decent bound spell that allows it to reroll ones to hit, which if you've got a decent combat-y sort of and also because you can make it a BSB, that means you can give it, you know, standards. So the Drakenhof banner can improve the armor value of regen by 1, which is, you know, pretty good, because I think where are we? Vampire Thrall has a regen of 5, so you can give it a regen 4 with a banner, which is, you know, again, pretty decent. So there's a lot of stuff you can do to it. It just doesn't have the Wailing Dirge, so it's probably not quite as good as a Carnosaur, but it has a bit. It basically adds a lot of utility. It's not a damage dealer, but it adds a lot of utility. And then, yeah, I said I'll do demons last. So let's go through all the good guys. So dwarves don't have anything. Empire of Man have a couple of mounts that are, do you know what, just mid at best. You've got the Imperial Griffin and the Griffin, although you'd always go Imperial Griffin because it's just better. Yes, an extra 30 points for an extra wound and extra strength. So, you know, it's worth the extra 30 points, I think. And an Imperial Griffin can have 2 heads for an extra 20 points. That's an extra attack. So that's pretty good. It's got a serrated maw attack, which is armor bane 2, multiple wounds 2. So if you're giving it 2 heads, it's got 2 attacks like that. Other than that, it's got wicked claws, which are normal strength AP 2. So, you know, so basically it's got 3 attacks that are AP 2 and 2 attacks that are armor bane 2 and multiple wounds 2. So it's pretty decent. It adds a decent amount of wounds to your character. It's not got a great armor save, but it doesn't really need it because the character's going to have a better one. I just don't know where to put it, to be honest. It's, you know, it's good for wizards to sit on, I think, but it doesn't have a breath attack because it does want to be in combat. But then again, actually, there's lots of combat wizard synergies and all the rest that you can... I think I'm going to put it there because I think if you put a wizard on it with illusion and, you know, some cool thing that like has killing blow or monster slayer or whatever, I think it could be really good. But again, it's like the most of Empire. It's just working out those synergies really. So I think the Griffin's pretty good because it's quite cheap, to be honest. What Empire are missing is the old Imperial Dragon. You don't seem to get that anymore, which is a bit sad because, you know, that was quite cool. And the Empire also have... Is that the only monstrous mount they have? I think that's it, isn't it? Yeah, it's just the Griffin. Yeah, so we've got Demogryph and other things and Pegasus and so on, but the Griffin's the only one that makes them a large target, so that's the only monster they've got. So the only big monster they've got anyway. Bretonnia... Similarly, they don't really have a lot. They've just got the Hippogriff, I think, that makes him a large target. The reason I'm going large target is because if you put your general on a large target, you get an 18-inch, you know, inspiring presence aura, and, you know, that's pretty good. But I prefer putting a BSB on a large target because, again, you get an 18-inch BSB aura, which is, you know, arguably better. And also, you can keep your BSB behind the lines, and then, you know, when your lines start to crumble, you can chuck it in, and then, you know, essentially, hopefully, you've done a bit of damage to them. So you're charging a big, tough monster against stuff that's been weakened. Anyway, so the Hippogriff functions very much like a cheap Griffin. It's +1 toughness, +3 wounds. You know, I forget, your Lord of Bretonnia has toughness, so it's only toughness 5, which isn't great. Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one again because it is so cheap, and it can have barding, so, you know, that's okay. 135 points, you know, you can get yourself up to a 2-up save, I think, because you got the Gromril Great Helm gives you some magic armor, improves so you can get it up to a 2-up, which is okay. And again, it's got the serrated maw. It's pretty much exactly the same as the Griffin, really. But it can't have 2 heads. So, that's another thing, isn't it? Like, does the Griffin... What's the toughness bonus? I've just looked at it and I've forgotten. Toughness +1. So it's only toughness 5. Actually, no, I'm going to put it down. It's better than a Coven Throne. It's there. Like, slap bang in the middle. Like everything to do with the Empire. And I think really like the Bretonnian Griffin has to go. In fact, I think I'm going to put this one at... I want to put it at the top of C. It's better than a Manticore, but not by much. Same amount of points, actually, but, you know, it is just slightly better. Cool. Then we've got the Wood Elves. The Wood Elves... They don't really have a lot of choice for large targety stuff. They've only got the Forest Dragon. So the Forest Dragon, it's got a Strength 2 breath weapon with no armor saves. So, you know, it's pretty much got the same stat profile as the Dark Elf Dragon, but a worse breath weapon, and that's about it, really. Everything else is more or less exactly the same. So, yes, it's a dragon, so yes, it's good, but... Is it better than a Wyvern? It's not better than a Black Hawk on a Wyvern. It's not better than that. It's not better than that. It is better than these two. Cool. So next. So that's the Wood Elves entry. It's pretty decent, but it's not. It's not. It's not great. So the High Elves have a Griffin, which is 130 points. Gives them toughness +2, so it gets them up to. It's cheap. It does Griffin-y things. It's okay. It's not great. It's probably down here, bottom of C, I think. Only because there are so many other options that that High Elves can take. So let's have a look at the dragons. So there's 3 tiers of dragon, right? You've got a star dragon, which I'm going to use this one for. And then you got a moon dragon. That's the star dragon. That'll be the moon dragon, and that'll be the sun dragon. The star dragon, S tier, easy. Strength 7, weapon skill 7, which, most dragons aren't. It's got 6 attacks. The point there being is it's going to be hitting other stuff or more stuff on 3s, which is really useful. It's 290 points, which, when you compare that with the Chaos Dragon, which is, again, the Chaos Dragon, is only S tier because it's got a Chaos Lord on it, right? If we're just looking at it like a standalone, but you just got to think about what is going to go on it. But the Chaos Dragon is 285 points, right? And has more or less the same stat line. In fact, it's got better initiative. So it's got D6 +1 stomp attacks, whereas the Chaos Dragon has only D6, which, is not that much more reliable, is it? So, yeah, and the Star Dragon's breath weapon, all of the High Elf dragons have a strength 4 AP 1 flaming breath weapon, and that's it. So they've arguably got one of the weakest breath weapons out of all the dragons, but they're still pretty good. But the Star Dragon definitely goes S tier because it's got a High Elf Prince on the back of it. So it does make it so much better. Because you can give yourself a 5 at ward and loads of defensive things. So that's why it's S tier. The next one, the Moon Dragon, is just a cheap version. It's pretty good, but it's only toughness +2, so it makes it toughness 5. That, to me, sinks it down to somewhere here. It's better than a Coven Throne. It's probably better than the Imperial Griffin with 2 heads. It's probably better than a Carnosaur. In fact, yeah, let's put it at the top of B. And then the Sun Dragon is, again, just toughness 5, just for extra wounds. It's got a pretty poor stat line in general. And it's 180 points, which is quite expensive for what it does. So it's definitely worse than those. It's worse than the Stonehorn. It's probably just slightly better than the High Elf Griffin, to be honest. So it's a slightly better option than the High Elf Griffin to me, but not by much. And then we've got the Flamespire and Frostheart Phoenix. Now the Flamespire Phoenix is cool because it's cheap. It's toughness 5, so it makes your character toughness 5. So we're sort of on par with the Sun Dragon at this stage. But it can come back to life, and if it flies over a unit, it can do D6 strength 4 hits with AP 1, which by sort of flying over something, which is, okay. But, again, when it dies, it can explode, it can just disappear, so basically when it dies, you roll a D6. On a 1 or 2, it's just dead. On a 3 to 5, it explodes, doing D6 strength 3 AP 1 hits to enemy units in combat. And on a roll 6, it is immediately reborn and just recovers D3 wounds when it loses its last wound. So it comes back with D3 wounds on it, which is, pretty good, considering that'll be at the end of combat and all the rest. Actually, that's not that good, because because of how initiative order works, right? If you're killed by like something that's initiative 5 and there's a load of initiative 3 things to go, then it could just die. I don't like it. I think it's pretty rubbish, actually, the Frost Heart Flame Spire Phoenix. It's probably down here. It's better than the War Sphinx because it's quick, but that's about it. It's only got 2 stomps as well. It's got rubbish attacks. Yeah. And the Frost Heart Phoenix. Now, Frost Heart Phoenix gives Strike Last to stuff it's in combat with, which is, you know, okay. It's got pretty rubbish attacks. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing really. It's got a full plate. Yeah, no, it's pretty awful. Oh no, it's toughness +3, so it makes your character's toughness 6 with a decent armor save. Okay, so because it's toughness 6, it probably, these things are all toughness 5. I think toughness 6 puts it probably it's better than that, but not as good as a Carnosaur. Probably puts it slap bang in the middle, because of the toughness 6 thing, and you can put like a combat character on top with like a magic weapon and stuff, so you can make it quite a bit more defensive, and it gives an extra 3 wounds as well, which isn't great, but it's quite expensive for 205 points. I've just noticed I've missed something from the Empire. I missed the other thing, the thing for the warrior priest elect account thing, the war altar. The war altars got its own movement, so it's not dragged along, which makes it pretty decent already. It's a chariot, so it's toughness 5, so it makes your elector toughness 5, and it gives him an extra 5 wounds. I think that puts him at 8, and it's already got an inbuilt 4-up save, so you don't need to do much with his armour. It's friendly units within 6 automatically pass any fear tests and can reroll any panic tests, so that's pretty useful. The command range is increased from 8, so the lector's leadership, to 12, so that's pretty useful, because the lector has Warrior Priest of Sigmar have some pretty decent prayers. So any unit within command range, so 12 inches with this, may reroll any hit rolls or wound rolls of a 1 during combat, which is pretty good. Or it can give all units around it a 5-up ward, which in the shooting phase, which is okay, situational. Or it can do some damage to a unit it's in combat with. D6 Strength 3 AP 2 hits. So, the prayer, you've got to choose a single friendly unit. It's not all of them, so it's not so good. Bottom of C, I think. It's okay if you're going for like a priesty based list, but I forgot the zombie dragon. Ha! Good job, I actually put all the pictures in, isn't it? I noticed on the last video on cavalry I missed the Chaos Dwarf cavalry off. Right. Where's the zombie dragon? I don't think it's very good in general. Yes, it's 215 points, which again is quite cheap for a dragon. It's got the D6 stomp attacks and all this. Enemy units engaged in combat with it are -1 initiative, which is pretty decent. It's got low initiative, but the vampire on top hasn't. It's got a strength 2 AP 3 breath weapon, which is not as good as the Wood Elf one, because the Wood Elf one was strength 2, no armor save, so it's worse than that. Yeah, I think it's just slightly worse than the Wood Elf dragon, because the thing with the Wood Elf dragon is there's lots of defensive stuff that you can put on the Wood Elf dragon that makes it really quite survivable. So I think that goes there. It's better than the Coven Throne. It's better than the Terrorgeist. Just. Yeah, better than the Terrorgeist, just. But, yeah. Cool. So then we've got the Greater Demons. Now, these are really, really, really difficult to place, like, as in terms of what they can do. Because it depends on what synergies they've got and what sort of, what you can do with them or how you decide to kit it out. But anyway, let's have a look. So the Bloodthirster first off, weapon skill 10, obviously. It's got fly 10, but it doesn't have swift stride. Which is pretty rubbish. So it's actually quite difficult to get a charge off. It does have demonic charge, so it does do D3 impact hits at strength 6, AP 2, which is pretty good. It doesn't have any stomp attacks, which is a bit rubbish. But it can take a great axe, which makes it strength 8, AP 3, armor bane 2, monster slayer, strike last. But still, all of that. Now, even with monster slayer and strike last, right, it's got heavy armor, toughness 6, and it can take demonic gifts up to 100 points. So really, and remember it's +1 strength when they charge anyway. So it can be up to strength 9 on the charge with that, which is absolutely hideous. Hideous, hideous, hideous. Now, what you can do with it, combat-wise, is you can give it a 5 at ward save. You can give it another +1 strength, so it's strength 10 on the charge. You can give it some a collar of corn, and then there's the normal chaotic gifts as well. So you could decide to not do that and give it the Aether Blade, which means no armor saves, which is pretty nice. So there's loads of stuff you can do. You can give it an extra attack, and it does have Furious Charge as well, so it gets 7 attacks on the charge, which is pretty nice. So there's loads of stuff you can do to make it really good. And even so, you're only spending 400 points, therefore, or nearly 500 points, sorry, a quarter of your army if you're really, really buffing it up. I wouldn't. I'd just stick with the Great Axe and probably give it the 5 at ward save thing. Now, so heavy armor, but why is that important? Because the ward save that demons have, they lose it against magical attacks, whereas this gives it a ward save always, so even against magical attacks. So that you're likely to be facing stuff with magical attacks if you're. So it's just my opinion. Anyway, where do I rank it in terms of all of this stuff? It's a massive, massive combat monster. It's like the Carnosaur. It's slightly more maneuverable than the Carnosaur. And it will kill a monster if it gets into combat. It'll do okay. Weirdly, it'll do okay into normal units, but yeah, it's not got stomp attacks, so it needs to really get the charge off, and it finds it difficult to do that because it doesn't have swift stride. So it's one of those things that's in a pretty tough spot in terms of working out how to assess what it's worth and where it should be. But I think the Bloodthirster kind of sits somewhere around there. Again, if you disagree, there is a comment section below this video. So then we've got the Great Unclean One. Let's have a look at the Great Unclean One. I really like this. So the first thing to note is that the Nurgle ability is you've got to reroll 6s to hit against the thing. So that makes it a bit more survivable. That notwithstanding, it's toughness 7 and it has 7 wounds, right? So it's pretty survivable. It has poisoned attacks, so that's pretty good. You can give it a bile sword, right? Or you can give it a plague flail, which plague flail makes it AP 3 at strength 6, or in the first round of combat at strength 8. I think you go with the Plague Flail, to be honest. That looks better than the Bile Sword. And it's only an extra 15 points, so why the hell wouldn't you? It does have some stomp attacks as well, so it's good in continuing combats. And yeah, it's just pretty awesome. I quite like the Great Unclean One. You can make it a level 4 wizard, which makes it 420 points, 445 with the Plague Flail. And again, it depends what you can't give it normal magic items, so you can give it a Nurgling Infestation, which you probably wouldn't, and those two are both for heralds. And you can give it a breath weapon attack, which is okay. I favour this one. This is for armor save, and the reason I favour this one is just to make it a bit more survivable, because basically it's got a 5 up regen, it's got a 5 up ward because it's demonic, and then a 4 up armor save, 4 up, 5 up, 5 up, 7 wins, toughness 7. That's a pretty difficult thing to counter. And then also you can give it battle magic as well. Battle magic's pretty good. You could also give it dark magic and, you know, cast out some frenzy and hatred every now and again maybe. But I think in terms of like every single spell being useful for something, battle magic's probably better. So yeah, battle magic, Great and Clean One. I really like it. The toughness 7 to me makes it really, really super strong. It's not very maneuverable though. So people can outmaneuver it, and people probably will outmaneuver it, really. And that's why you need battle magic, because there's that one that allows you to move twice, so you can move it 20 inches in a turn, which makes it pretty decent. So, where do I put it? I think it's somewhere over here. It's probably the bottom of A. Let's put it at the bottom of A. Okay. Now, the Keeper of Secrets. Oh my god. This is one of the best Greater Demons, and also the worst at the same time. So it's toughness 6, 6 wounds. That's pretty good. No armor save. It's just got the demonic ward save. It does have Killing Blow, Strike First, Impaling Claws with 6 attacks. It does have Swift Stride, so 8 inch plus Swift Stride. It's pretty good. Remember as well that they get Slanesh get +1 move, +1 to charge rolls, and +1 to your charge distance as well. So your max Swift Stride is actually 10 inches. So this can go 18 inch threat range. You can make it a level 4 wizard, which makes it 420 points. Now, you will be upgrading this in terms of gifts, because you can make it so strong. Where's the Slanesh things? So, you can give it Enrapturing Gaze, which is pretty good. I can't remember what I was going to do with it, to be honest. I think it's demonology, isn't it? So I think if you give it the demonology lore, you can give it like loads and loads and loads of extra benefits, loads and loads of extra bonuses. So you can give it like, if you get the 2 buffing spells, which you're not guaranteed if you're level 4, but anyway, if you get the 2 buffing spells, then you know you're doing pretty well. You could also take Illusion and hope for Spectral Doppelganger, but I think Demonology is a bit more, you know, is a bit more kind of has a bit more utility. But you could get it up to like 6 attacks at toughness 7, strength 7, weapon skill 8, initiative 8, or an extra AP, making these AP 3. And it's got D3 stomps as well, so it's really, really super good. But it is very, very flaky, so it's just got this ward save. So that's pretty good and bad at the same time. I'm going to put it next to the Bloodthirster. I think it's arguably better than the Bloodthirster because of Swift Stride. In fact, it's probably better than that because of Swift Stride, because of how fast it is. But it's not quite as good as that dragon. Is it better than a Carnosaur? Just about. Yeah. So I'm going to move that down there like that. I think that's not as good as the Carnosaur. Oh no, the Carnosaur's situational, isn't it? No, let's put that there. Yeah, leave it there. And then finally, the Lord of Change. Now, the Lord of Change is a really interesting prospect because it's not really a combat monster. You can give it a Tzeentchian wand, which means it can move and still shoot that. So, it's got fly 9, so that's got a 27-inch threat range. Weapon skill 6, multiple shots, D3+1, quick shot, flaming. That's okay. And then you make it a level 4 wizard. But you look at the choice of lore that it's got. There's a pretty decent choice of laws there. Battle magic arguably is the best out of this because you're wanting it to sit at range and do damage. And then if you look at the spells, so Demons of Tzeentch just get +1 to cast. They hate Nurgle demons, but they get +1 to cast, which is absolutely fantastic. You can give it Kairos, Twin Heads, so he knows an extra spell, so it knows 5 spells. You can give it -1 to hit in shooting with this iridescent corona. So you can really you can give it the will of. You can't give it those two and the will of Tzeentch, but you can give it the will of Tzeentch. Once per round, may reroll a single d6, so you can make it Kairos basically for 75 points. And then with the generic demonic gifts, they're only for 25. No, that's it. So that's all you can do, but you can make it Kairos, which is pretty cool. Give it +1 to cast, and what I'm looking for is the bloody spell. Here we are, which is Gift of Mutations. Short range hex, so it's not really. Yeah. If you look at like a Demon of Tzeentch list, there's lots of flaming chariots and stuff because you can make them level 3 wizards. So like your rare choices, you can have 2 level 3 wizards. I think it's 2, isn't it? I can't remember off the top of my head. And that's something I really need to get just a lot of my AOS stuff rebased onto Square because I've got so many armies. It's unbelievable. Where the hell is it? Burning Chariot, 190. Yes, a 250 is a level 3 Burning Chariot. And that you give the hexes to because you're running around shooting this warp flame, not really doing a lot, but yeah, anyway, so that's my where am I going to put it? I'm going to put it there. I don't know, to be honest. It's not a combat monster. Right, is it better than a Thunder Tusk? I'm going to put it behind the Arachnarok because it does the same job as the Arachnarok. It's a big, tough-ish thing that can do a bit of output, but its utility is in casting spells, not in doing anything else. Cool. So that's my tier list. So we've got S tier, we've got the Dark Elf Dragon, the High Elf, Star Dragon, and the Chaos Dragon. I think they're pretty solid up there. Now, I would put this up here if I was certain that the Armour of... So, actually, no, I'm going to put that there because we're doing it as of now. So, as of now, the Tomb Kings of Khemri have an artifact called the Armour of Ages, which is a 70-point suit of armour, but what it does is it forces your opponent to re-roll successful wound rolls against you, which on a toughness 6 model is absolutely killer. So that is it's just super, super, super survivable. This thing, you can put the Mark of Nurgle on the rider. So, you're hitting something that's weapon skill 7, possibly 8 or 9 by the time you get into combat. And then you're re-rolling 6s to hit against it. And then it's toughness 6. And then you've got probably a 5 up... Or you've definitely got a 5 up ward and probably a 5 up regen as well. So this is like... The Chaos Dragon's pretty unkillable. This one, because of Armour of Ages, is pretty unkillable. The high elf dragon you can give a 5-up ward save to, and there's something else you can do to it. You can get it up to a 2-up save quite easily as well. So you got a 2-up, 5-up. I think there's a regen that you can add to it as well. I can't remember. This one you can give a 5-up ward save to. I don't think you can add a regen to it, but you can give it a 5-up ward, and its breath weapon is just makes it the best dragon in the game as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, and then, as you can see, dragons at the top, everything else at the bottom, pretty much. Apart from the star dragon, but I just don't think it's very good. Like, it just doesn't add much to toughness, and it doesn't really, it doesn't really benefit you very much. But yeah, but I think we've got a dragon at every tier apart from at D tier, where you've got this. And I really want to put that down there, but I don't think it's worth that. I don't think it's that bad. I think that's a pretty... Oh, look, I've got a normal distribution as well. So, well, normalish, which is interesting. So, yeah, I think that's a pretty decent tier list of all the monstrous mounts. So, I hope that you found this useful. If you disagree, which I'm sure you do, please do pop a comment down below. I typically respond to everything. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's done enough to earn your subscription. If it has, there is indeed a facility for you to subscribe and listen to more such nonsense in future. And if you have liked the video, which I hope you have, if you've got this far, you probably should. Bit weird of you to spend an hour and of your time listening to something you didn't like, but if you did like the video, there is a button that allows you to express that. So if you wouldn't mind awfully clicking that, if that's the case. If not, it's up to you. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you round soon. Toodaloo.